Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
At the Interstellar Academy of Unified Civilizations, brilliance was loud. It shimmered, glowed, screeched, and pulsed through the vast crystalline halls. Students displayed their abilities openly. Some out of pride, others out of instinct. A being of living plasma flickered between colors as it debated theoretical physics. Nearby, a multi-limbed strategist rearranged hovering battle simulations with impossible speed. Even the quieter species radiated presence. Telepathic whispers brushing against nearby minds like static. Elias Van had none of that. He walked unnoticed, not because he was invisible, but because nothing about him demanded attention. No bioluminescence. No exoskeleton, no psychic field, just a human boy in a standard academy uniform, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered. Baseline species, someone muttered as he passed. Low-tier gravity evolution, another added. Elias heard them all. He always did, but he never reacted. The classroom dome adjusted itself as students entered, reshaping into a semi-spherical amphitheater. Each species' environmental needs were accommodated automatically. Sections of liquid suspension, pockets of methane gas, zones of high radiation. Elias took his usual seat in the neutral zone. Back row, always the back row. From there, he could see everything. Professor Threxel drifted into the center of the room, its elongated form phasing slightly between dimensions. Its voice didn't travel through air. It appeared directly in the students' minds. Final evaluation protocols will now be discussed. The room fell silent. Even the most arrogant students paid attention now. A projection formed above them, a rotating hologram of a planet. Violent storms churned across its surface. Lightning split continents. Massive life forms moved beneath the clouds like shadows. The Deathworld exam. A ripple of excitement and fear spread through the room. For once, something interesting, said Kael'thra, a tall, blade-limbed warrior species from a high-gravity war planet. Statistically unnecessary, another student replied coldly. We already know who will pass. Several eyes turned briefly toward Elias, then away again. Survival duration, 72 standard hours, Professor Threxel continued. Environment, uncontrolled. Hazards, unlimited. Assistance, none. Images flashed. Students from previous cycles running, fighting, failing. Some didn't return. The weak will be filtered out, Kael'thra said with sharp grin. Elias leaned back slightly in his chair. Filtered out. He repeated the phrase in his head, not with fear, but with curiosity. Then the projection changed. A list of names appeared. Selected candidates. The room grew tense. Names scrolled slowly, each one greeted with murmurs of approval or expectation. Of course, he was guaranteed. Top percentile. Elias didn't bother looking at first. He wasn't expecting to see his name. He never did. Then, Elias Van. The room went quiet. Not loud quiet. Confused quiet. Who? Someone asked. The human, another replied. That's a mistake. Kael'thra turned fully this time, studying Elias like one might inspect an object that didn't belong. You, the warrior said aloud. You were selected? Elias looked up slowly. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, something flickered behind Elias's calm expression. Something cold, something focused. Then it was gone. I guess so, he said simply. A few students laughed. Nepotism, maybe? Or statistical padding. He won't last a drop. Elias didn't argue, didn't defend himself, didn't care. But his fingers tapped once against the desk, a small, controlled movement, like he was thinking, calculating. After the lecture, the halls buzzed with speculation. Groups formed quickly, alliances, strategies, survival theories. Elias walked alone. As always, a smaller, avian-like student hurried to keep up with him. Hey, Elias, right? He glanced sideways. The student flinched slightly under his gaze. I just want to say, good luck, they said. You'll need it. Elias studied them for a second too long. Everyone will, he replied. The avian student gave an awkward nod and quickly left. Elias continued walking. Later, in his assigned quarters, Elias sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the data screen. Keros 9. Atmospheric toxicity. Lethal. Surface stability. Unpredictable. Fauna classification. Hyper-aggressive apex ecosystem. Most students would focus on survival odds. Elias focused on patterns. Wind cycles. Terrain shifts. Predator behavior. His eyes moved quickly, absorbing everything. Memorizing. Adapting before he even arrived. After a while, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. 72 hours, he murmured. No fear. No doubt. Just anticipation. Across the academy, whispers spread. The human is going to die. It'll be quick. He shouldn't have been selected. No one noticed that Elias hadn't once questioned himself, not once wondered if he would survive, because somewhere deep inside him, buried beneath years of silence, observation, and being overlooked, there was something waiting, something old, something patient, and for the first time in his life, it was about to be tested. The transport ship hummed with restrained power as it cut through the void. Inside, the selected students sat in silence, or what passed for silence among species that communicated through light pulses, pheromones, and low-frequency vibrations. Tension filled the air, thick and electric. Elias Venn sat strapped into his seat, hands resting loosely in his lap. Still, calm, watching. Across from him, Kael'thras sharpened one of its blade-like limbs against a metallic ridge, the sound harsh and deliberate. "You're quiet," the warrior said, not looking up. Even now. Elias shrugged slightly. Talking won't help. A few nearby students exchanged amused glances. "Neither will silence," another added. "Not where we're going." Elias didn't respond. He turned his gaze toward the viewport instead. Keros 9 filled the darkness ahead. Even from orbit, it looked wrong. Storm systems spiraled unnaturally, colliding and reforming in violent bursts. Lightning crawled horizontally across the clouds. Massive shapes shifted beneath the atmosphere, too large to identify clearly. Alive. The planet felt alive. And hostile. Final descent in 60 seconds. The instructor's voice echoed through the cabin. Pods began to deploy along the ship's underbelly. Each student would be dropped alone. No teams. No alliances. No safety net. Kael'thras stood, rolling its shoulders. "Try not to die too quickly, human." Elias glanced at him. A faint, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I'll do my best." It wasn't sarcasm. That unsettled Kael'thras more than if it had been. Elias stepped into his drop pod. The interior sealed around him with a hiss. Minimal equipment, basic survival suit, limited tools, no weapons. Descent initiated. The pod launched. The atmosphere hit like a wall. The pod shook violently as it tore through layers of toxic clouds. Heat flared across the exterior, turning the small viewport into a sheet of orange fire. Elias's body tensed, not in panic, but in preparation. His breathing slowed, controlled, measured. The shaking grew worse. Warning lights flickered. Structural stress critical. Elias didn't react. He simply watched the data, adjusted, waited, then impact. The pod slammed into the surface with crushing force. For a moment, everything was still. Then the hatch blew open. Air rushed in, burning, heavy, wrong. Elias staggered out, dropping to one knee as his lungs seized. The atmosphere clawed at his throat like acid. His vision blurred. Every instinct screamed at him to panic, to gasp, to run. He didn't. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Shallow, controlled, and hold out. Each breath felt like swallowing fire, but his body adapted, faster than it should have. Within minutes, the burning dulled. Not gone, but manageable. Elias stood. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions. Dark. Shifting ground pulsed beneath his boots. Jagged rock formations jutted out like broken teeth. The sky churned in violent shades of red and black. And the sound, low, constant, a deep, rhythmic tremor that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Elias tilted his head slightly. Listening. Not wind, he murmured. The ground shifted again. Subtle, but deliberate. His eyes sharpened. Something's moving. The comm unit crackled to life. Voices flooded in, panic, chaotic. I can't stabilize. The air. My filters aren't working. There's something under. Static, then silence. Elias stared at the device for a moment, then reached up and turned it off. The quiet that followed wasn't comforting. It was clearer, focused, useful. He crouched, placing a gloved hand against the ground. It wasn't solid. It flexed slightly under pressure. Warm, too warm. Elias pressed harder. The surface reacted. Subtle ripples spreading outward from his touch. His eyes widened just a fraction. Not terrain, he said quietly. A living layer. He stood slowly, scanning the horizon again. This wasn't just a dangerous planet. It was an ecosystem that didn't behave like one. Everything moved. Everything reacted. Everything hunted. A distant roar echoed across the landscape. Deep, resonant, predatory. Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he adjusted his stance slightly, balanced his weight. His breathing steadied further. Heart rate slowing. Not from calm, but from focus. He examined his surroundings with sharper intent now. High ground, unstable. Low ground, too exposed. Moving shadows, a void. Still areas, suspicious. His mind worked quickly, piecing together patterns. Learning, adapting, surviving. A sudden tremor ran through the ground beneath him. Stronger this time. Closer. Elias turned. A section of the surface bulged upward, then collapsed. Something beneath it moved. Circling. Testing. Elias didn't run. He stepped back slowly instead, eyes locked on the shifting ground. Too early, he whispered. Not yet. Hours passed. The environment didn't get easier. Elias did. He learned when the ground was stable, and when it wasn't. Learned which sounds meant danger, and which were just noise. Learned how to move without triggering the planet itself. Each step became deliberate, efficient, quiet. By the time the first artificial night fell, Elias had changed. Not visibly, not dramatically, but something in the way he moved, the way he watched, the way he understood, was no longer the same. He found a slightly elevated ridge, one of the few areas that didn't pulse beneath his feet. For now, he sat, scanning the horizon as darkness swallowed the landscape. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating massive shapes moving far away. Too far to identify, but not too far to matter. Elias rested his arms on his knees, breathing steady. Eyes sharp. 72 hours, he repeated softly. A pause. Then quieter. Let's see what you've got. Somewhere in the darkness, something answered. Night on Caros. 9 wasn't an absence of light. It was a presence. Darkness spread like a living thing, swallowing the horizon in slow, deliberate waves. The sky pulsed with distant lightning, casting brief, violent flashes that revealed silhouettes of things too large and too wrong to comprehend fully. Elias didn't sleep. He couldn't, not because of fear, because the planet didn't allow it. The ground beneath his ridge shifted every few minutes, forcing constant micro-adjustments to maintain balance. The air grew colder, but heavier, laced with new toxins that stung sharper with each breath. And the sounds? They changed. Daytime roars were replaced by quieter noises. Clicks, scrapes, wet, sliding movements beneath the surface. Hunting sounds. Elias sat still, eyes half-lidded, but alert. Listening, learning. A faint tremor ran through the ridge, different from before. Not the random shifting of a living surface. This was directed. Elias stood slowly. His muscles protested slightly, fatigue creeping in, but his movements remained controlled. Something's tracking, he murmured. Another tremor. Closer. Circling. Testing him. The ground to his left bulged, then exploded upward. The creature that emerged was worse up close. 6 limbs, each joint bending in unnatural directions. Its skin was semi-translucent, pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Its head split open as it rose, revealing a triple-layered jaw lined with rotating teeth. It didn't roar. It clicked. Rapid. Excited. Elias didn't step back. He watched. Measured. The creature lunged. Fast. Faster than anything he'd faced before. Elias moved. Not away, but sideways. Just enough. The creature's jaws snapped shut inches from his shoulder. He felt the air shift as it passed. Too fast to react normally. But Elias wasn't reacting. He was predicting. He grabbed one of its limbs mid-lunge. Pain shot through his arm as the force nearly tore his shoulder apart. But he held on, twisted, used the creature's own momentum. The joint bent the wrong way. A sharp, wet crack echoed. The creature shrieked. A high, distorted sound that vibrated through the ground. Elias didn't hesitate. He stepped in. Close. Closer than instinct should allow. His other hand drove into the softer section beneath its head, where the pulsing veins converged. He pushed. Hard. The creature spasmed, then collapsed. Silence returned. Heavy. Elias stood over the body, breathing harder now. His arm trembled slightly. Injury. Minor, but real. He flexed his fingers. Still functional. Good. He looked down at the creature. Studied it. Not with disgust. Not with fear. With curiosity. Weak point, he muttered. Central nerve cluster. His gaze shifted to the ground around him. Burrow predator. Relies on surprise. He crouched beside the body, examining its structure more closely. Learning. Adapting. Improving. A low rumble spread outward. Not from the creature. From the planet. Elias froze. Listening. Then he understood. That wasn't alone. The ground moved again. Multiple points this time. Not circling. Closing in. Elias stood slowly. His breathing steadied once more. Heart rate dropping. Not from exhaustion, but from control. Something inside him shifted. Not physically. Deeper than that. A switch. A threshold. Crossed. The next creature burst from the ground behind him. Elias didn't turn. Didn't need to. He stepped forward just as it lunged. Then pivoted sharply. His injured arm guided its movement instead of resisting it. Redirecting. The creature slammed into ground where he had stood. Before it could recover, Elias struck. Precise. Efficient. The same weak point. Faster this time. Cleaner. Another came. Then another. Elias moved between them. Not panicked. Not desperate. Flowing. Each motion calculated. Each strike intentional. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was learning mid-combat. Improving with every second. Minutes later, it was over. 3 bodies lay still. The ground settled. The planet quieted. Elias stood alone again. His breathing slowed. Controlled. Deliberate. He looked at his hands. Slightly bloodied. Steady. Okay, he said softly. Not shocked. Not overwhelmed. Just acknowledging. Above. Hidden in orbit, the instructors watched. Subject Elias Venn, one said, voice tight. Engage multiple Apex-class burrow predators. Survival probability was less than 3%. Another added. Update. A pause. Recalculating. Back on Caro's 9, Elias dragged one of the creature's limbs toward the ridge. Not for food. Not yet. For tools. He began dismantling parts of it with careful precision. Claws, sharp enough to cut. Hide, resistant to the acidic air. Internal structures, flexible, durable, useful. Everything was useful. Hours passed. By the time the storm clouds began to gather again, Elias was no longer just surviving. He was preparing. Rain began to fall. At first, it seemed harmless. Then it hit the ground and hissed. Acidic, strong enough to melt parts of the creature's remains. Elias watched closely, then adjusted his position under a natural overhang formed by shifting rock. Not random. Chosen. Lightning split the sky again. For a brief moment, the entire landscape lit up, and in that instant, Elias saw them, far in the distance. Massive shapes. Watching. Not approaching. Observing. Elias narrowed his eyes slightly. So I'm not the only one hunting. He leaned back against the rock, rain hissing just beyond his shelter. His body was tired, injured, exposed, by all logical standards. He should have been terrified. He wasn't. Instead, for the first time since arriving, Elias smiled, not wide, not joyful, but real. Good, he whispered, because deep inside him, that ancient, patient instinct was no longer waiting. It was awake, and it liked this world. Orbit above Caros, 9 was calm, deceptively calm. Inside the observation chamber, dozens of instructors and analysts watched the surface through layered projections, thermal scans, motion tracking, biosignature readings. Most screens showed chaos. Students running, hiding, failing. A few still held out. High-ranking species adapting through technology or specialized biology. But one feed had drawn everyone's attention. Elias Van. Zoom in, one analyst said. The projection sharpened. Elias stood in the middle of an acidic storm, partially shielded by a crude structure assembled from creature remains and fragments of his drop pod. Primitive, effective. His equipment should have failed hours ago. Another observer muttered. It did, someone replied. He compensated. They watched as Elias adjusted a makeshift breathing filter, using layers of organic membrane and suit components. No hesitation. No wasted motion. Subject displays accelerated adaptive behavior. A senior instructor noted, beyond expected human parameters. Humans aren't even classified for this level of environment. Another added. A pause. Then, quietly, maybe that classification is wrong. On the surface, the storm intensified. Rain fell harder, acid striking the ground with violent hissing bursts. The terrain shifted more aggressively now, reacting to the atmospheric instability. Elias stepped out from his shelter, not because it was safe, because staying still was worse. The ground tremored beneath him, not like before. This wasn't random movement. This was something large, very large. The Academy systems activated. Final challenge deployed. Across the planet, surviving students froze. Some tried to run immediately. Others hid. A few prepared to fight. Most didn't understand what was coming. Elias did. He stood still, eyes scanning the horizon. The tremors grew stronger, rhythmic, heavy, each impact sending vibrations through the living ground. Then, the surface split open. It rose slowly, not with the speed of the smaller predators, but with something far worse. Weight, mass, presence. The creature towered above the landscape, its body armored in layered plates that shifted like tectonic segments. Massive limbs anchored it into the ground, as if the planet itself was holding it up. Its head, if it could be called that, was a jagged formation of sensory clusters, constantly moving, constantly analyzing. Ancient, apex. In orbit, the room went silent. That wasn't in the database. It's too large. No student is expected to survive that. Elias stared up at it. Rain ran down his face. Acid stung his skin where his suit had worn thin. His body was exhausted, injured, human. The creature noticed him. Of course it did. Everything on this planet noticed weakness. And Elias, alone, exposed, standing still, should have been the easiest target. The creature moved. One massive limb lifted, then slammed down. The ground erupted. Elias moved, not fast enough to outrun it, not strong enough to overpower it. But he didn't try either. He moved correctly. The impact zone collapsed behind him as he stepped just outside its reach. Not by instinct alone, by calculation, timing, observation. Another strike. Closer, faster. Elias pivoted, adjusting his movement based on the delay between limb lift and impact, learning its rhythm, just like the ground, just like the smaller predators. Everything had patterns. Even this. You're not faster, Elias muttered under his breath. Another step, another narrow dodge. You're not smarter. The creature roared, a deep, grinding sound that shook the air itself. Elias's eyes sharpened. But you're predictable. In orbit, he's analyzing it, someone whispered. In real time, another added. That's not possible under that level of stress. Elias circled slowly, not attacking. Not yet. He watched how the creature shifted its weight, how its armor plates moved, where the joints exposed softer material, briefly, very briefly. There, Elias said, the next strike came, and Elias ran toward it. Gasps filled the observation room. Did he just... He's closing distance? Elias ducked under the descending limb at the last possible moment. The ground shattered behind him. He didn't stop, didn't hesitate. He used the creature's own movement, its own momentum, to get closer, inside its range, where its size became a disadvantage. The creature reacted, but slower now, too large to adjust quickly. Elias climbed, using cracks in its armor, using his own tools, crafted from the remains of earlier predators. Each movement precise, each grip intentional. The creature thrashed. The storm intensified, but Elias held on. Central structure, he muttered, recalling the smaller creatures. Everything has won. He reached the upper section of its body, where the sensory clusters converged. Protected, but not perfectly. Elias raised a sharpened claw he had fashioned earlier, took one breath. Steady, focused, then struck. The reaction was immediate, violent. The creature convulsed, its massive body destabilizing as the internal system collapsed. A sound tore through the air, deep, distorted, final. Then it fell. The impact shook the planet. Dust and acidic rain exploded outward. The storm began to break. Silence followed. Real silence. For the first time since the exam began, Elias dropped to the ground beside the fallen creature. He staggered slightly, nearly fell, but caught himself. His body screamed for rest, for relief, for safety. He ignored it. Slowly, he climbed onto the creature's massive form, sat down, waited. Minutes later, rescue ships descended to the clearing sky. In orbit, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the senior instructor broke the silence. Reevaluate species classification. No one argued. No one questioned it. Humans, one analyst said carefully, originated from a class for Deathworld. A pause. Then, correction. Back on the surface. Elias looked up as the ship approached. For the first time, he wasn't being overlooked. Every sensor, every eye, every mind was focused on him. New classification, the instructor said quietly. Deathworld natives. Elias blinked once. Not surprised, not proud, just understanding. Because this world, this violent, unpredictable, relentless world, hadn't broken him. It had revealed him. And somewhere deep inside, that ancient instinct settled. Not asleep, not gone, just patient again, waiting for the next challenge.